Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Brett's Brain. Today we're going to talk about how to manage all the investors that you have on your cap table and not spend all your time doing it. Hey, I'm Brett Brohl, former entrepreneur, current venture capitalist. Thanks so much for checking out the channel. Make sure you share, like, subscribe, do all those things. Our goal here is to help entrepreneurs succeed. So make sure you ask us questions that we can be helpful with in future videos. Okay, investor management can be really time consuming. Sometimes it can be really frustrating. Sometimes it can be really valuable. But let's talk about how to do it most effectively and some tips and tricks that you can implement right away that will hopefully save you time and make your investors happier. So let's start at the baseline. The number one thing that you can do to placate all of your investors, and while you think it might take you a lot of time, it'll actually save you so much time in the long run, is to write a regular update. We have a template on our blog. We've put one out there. It's a real company that is in our portfolio, the way that they keep their investors updated. If you write a monthly update and include all of your investors on it and make it real and actually valuable, it will save you so much time in the long run. I can't stress that enough. And don't make it fluff. Don't write like a wordy long email that doesn't actually say anything. Nobody cares about that stuff. Be real, be transparent, talk about both things that are going well and the things that are the challenges facing you, and send it out to everybody. That's going to save you so much time in the long run. That is your baseline. After that baseline, let's talk about this in 3 different tiers. So tier 1 is your board members, so investors that have joined your board. Tier 2 is your major investors, and we'll talk about what the definition of a major investor is in a second. And tier 3 is your everybody else. All right, so we'll go from top to bottom. So your board member investors, these are people that have fiduciary responsibility to your company and to all of their shareholders of your company. It's really important that they know everything that's going on. The companies that I'm on the boards of, we communicate weekly, whether it's a text, a voice memo, or we're doing formal calls and check-ins. There's no boards that I'm on, or very, very rarely do I go a week without hearing from a founder whose board I'm on. I need to know everything. I need to know cash positions, strategies, hiring, firing, like what's the general health of the company. It's really important. My job, I take it seriously in those positions, is to help those founders and help us remove those hills or those roadblocks, or at least provide some insights into things that we should be doing or we should be thinking about. My goal is not to be reported to. That's not what I want to do in any of those roles that I fill. It's always to be helpful to a startup. So board, you got to be communicative with. You have to give them all of the up-to-date information, and you have to do it proactively. If you know something is going to happen, like you're going to have to do layoffs, don't wait until you do them and then tell the board. Talk to the board ahead of time. They should be helpful. In fact, don't be afraid to have those hard conversations with your board as soon as you can. Another saying that we like to have around here is, I can't help you if I don't know what's going on. You should always remember that. And your board members have fiduciary responsibility to help you and to help the company for all of the shareholders. And so they should know what's going on. So make sure you're not hiding anything from your board. Really communicative. It's really time consuming as well. One tip and trick there to make it a little bit less time consuming for the CEO is that have your support staff around you or your senior level executives help with the areas that their expertise is in. So if you're a little bit later stage company and you have, it doesn't matter what stage you're at. If you have, one other C-suite person in your team, a CTO, for example, have them do the product update for your board. When you have a board meeting, you're putting a board deck together, have them come and present to the board if they're not actually on it themselves. If you have a chief revenue officer, same thing, have them come and present their portion to the board and put their slides together. So just because you're the CEO doesn't mean you have to do all the prep and work yourself. In fact, most great CEOs don't. They might manage one portion of the business and they put that together, but then they have the people that they've hired and they trust put their sections of the report together, or the reporting together. And that can really save you some time. And quite frankly, from a board perspective, it's great to get to know these people, to see them, to help evaluate how well they're performing. Oftentimes for your senior level executives, it makes them feel really good and important when they are presenting to the board also. So it makes them realize I am really important. It makes them feel better about their job, the work that they're doing. It helps grow their self-worth and their confidence. So as a CEO, you should hire people that are better than you at those specific things. Let them shine. Let them come through. Let them give them the glory or the hard. Let them talk through some of the hard things that they're facing in their specific areas. And that'll save you a lot of time as well. Next level, major investors. So how do I define a major investor? Well, oftentimes in your financing docs, there's actually a threshold that will define your major investors. Usually, major investors ask for a couple of different rights. Something they almost always ask for pro rata rights so they can invest into subsequent rounds. The other thing that they're asking for oftentimes is information rights so that they know what's going on, so that they can ask you a question and you legally have to answer it. And so major investor thresholds can change. Oftentimes at seed stage, it might be $500,000 or $1 million. And so it's really only those couple of investors that write really big checks to you. And so if you're raising a $3 million round, you might have 2, 3 at most major investors in most of those rounds. And those are people that you should keep really close. Those are also usually the biggest funds. Those are the ones that can write large checks into your next round. You want to make sure you over communicate to those investors. You want to make sure that they feel like they're part of the strategy decisions, even if they're not on the board. They also are often the funds with the most resources, the biggest networks, the people that can make the most introductions to you. They want to be active and help their portfolio companies, even if they're not on the board. Take advantage of that. That's a real asset that you have as a founder, is these funds with resources that want to be helpful. It's your job to manage them, to make sure you set expectations of how they can help. Don't expect them to just come in and know exactly how to help you. Ask for certain things. Ask well. So I would recommend with your major investors that you do hold a monthly one-on-one meeting with those investors. It's a great way to build and establish those relationships. When you invest in a founder, it's funny, you know them, but you don't really know them. It's not until you start meeting them on a regular basis and you build that cadence that you build that rapport and that relationship. And that's where those little nuggets or those introductions really come out of, is in those one-on-one meetings. So I'd recommend a one-on-one cadence with those investors on a monthly basis. Sometimes you can also do a quarterly meeting alongside your board meeting where you invite all of your major investors to, so you're, rather than doing a one-on-ones, you're doing one-to-manys, and that can help you save some time. I also sometimes will get board decks from companies that I'm not on the board of as a major investor. And that's not a bad idea. Like, why not show that level of transparency? It makes me feel involved. I might be able to help on something, or I might see something that other people don't see, even though theoretically I'm not on the board and don't need to get that level of information or transparency. I don't think it's a bad thing to do. Now, the rest. Let's talk about the rest. And oftentimes this rest pile is where a lot of your time and effort goes to. So number one, set expectations from the beginning. So if you have an investor that doesn't really add a lot of value, but they want a lot of your time, I would set expectations. I would say, hey, listen, really appreciate that your eagerness for our company and your eagerness to provide advice, but I can't meet with you on a monthly basis. Be protective of your calendar. Maybe you invite that person to that quarterly investor update where you can give them something to push them to, where they can provide some insight, some feedback, and then make sure that you're doing those monthly meetings on a regular basis. It can be really hard to tell an investor no, but if they're not a huge investor, it can be okay to do. Push them to those one-to-many opportunities that you're going to provide for them. We have a couple portfolio companies that do all investor calls biannually as a way to prevent having to do one-on-ones with a lot of those smaller investors that really want to be helpful, really want to be kept in the loop. But this person has 50 investors on their cap table, and it's impossible to do one-on-ones with all of them, every month. And I would tell those, if people are asking for that, I would tell them, say, hey, we can't do this with you every month because we have 50 smaller investors. And if I did that with everybody, I would have no time to work. And so we're going to do these biannual all investor meetings where we're going to give you an update, give you an opportunity for Q&A, to ask questions, to provide insight. And we're going to send you those monthly updates to make sure you're up to date on what we're doing. And that's just the reality of it, is that you have to push people that direction, especially folks that, might be, have good meaning or good reason, or they really think they're being helpful. But for you, they're maybe not being as helpful, or they're going different directions than where you want to go. So those are some strategies for each of those 3 tiers. Again, I believe that all investors genuinely are trying to be helpful, but they don't realize how much time and effort it takes to manage 50 different investors that are on your cap table. Oftentimes, they also don't realize that you have that many investors. And when you just say that, it says, oh, just call me if you need me. It becomes a call me if you need me type situation for those smaller investors. So sometimes you just need to communicate that. Setting up some sort of regular cadence where people can come get updates and have the ability to ask Q&A where it's one-to-manys is also a really effective tool that you can use for those smaller investors. So that's just recapping a couple of things. Hopefully this is helpful. Do a great job managing your investors and keeping them up to date. Always be transparent, because you know what? Those investors that you have on your cap table today are going to be the most important people for the next round of capital you raise. Thanks for checking out the channel. Make sure you share, like, subscribe, and ask us questions that we can answer in future videos.